What is good, guys? Welcome back to another video here on SP Vids. In today's video, what I wanted to talk about is the latest release that I just made. I kind of wanted to do a reflection video on that. Without sounding like some sort of corporate meeting, I did want to do a kind of lessons learned from this and apply that to moving forward to my next beat tapes. Now, one of the things that I've always championed on this channel is making projects and finishing them. I think it's the best way to learn what needs to improve with your beat making. And I've definitely learned a lot already from this latest release that I've done. Now, I haven't been very good with my releases recently because it's just very difficult to slot these things in on top of doing the channel and promoting the channel and trying to promote the shop and earn a living from all this. So it was great to be able to find a little bit of time to do it. Obviously, it was because I wasn't actually able to upload videos at the time because I was ill. But it was really good to be able to do it. And yeah, I've already learned a ton of things. So I wanted to go through the positives and negatives of the tape in my personal opinion. Now, I don't want this to come across as super critical because A, I don't think it's productive to be super critical of yourself, and B, that's kind of something I'm trying to move away from personally, is just to not be too critical of myself. So I have tried to keep this as balanced as I can, but there's definitely things that I've learned, there's definitely things that need to improve, and there's definitely things that I was happy with as well. So if you've never done this before with a release, maybe it is something that's worth sitting down and thinking about. Maybe just pull up a notepad and listen to your tape and write down the things that you really liked about it, write down the things that you didn't like about it too much. And then when it comes to making your next tape, you can read through those points and hopefully it means you make something that you're a lot happier with. So that's kind of my idea with this video for myself, really, is to just kind of do a little bit of analysis and decide what I want to improve in my next beat tape. So let's start off with the things that I was happy with. Now, the first one, probably not the most amazing point, but I was just actually glad to be able to release something because I haven't done it for a long time, like I've already mentioned. The fact that I've actually done something, I'm really, really happy about that. I'm proud to be able to say that I've got a new tape out there. Okay, it's not like a world beater, but I'm just glad that the process of sitting down, making a series of beats and putting them together, I'm glad I've done that again. And it's kind of kickstarted my releases again. Now, I think this is why potentially the quality wasn't as good as I wanted it to be, because I almost feel like I've started again. It feels like it was my first beat tape again. But like I said, I'm very, very happy that I've started this process again. So I'm really keen to get another thing out now because I think the next tape will definitely be an improvement because of the things that I'm going to mention in this one that I want to improve. So yeah, I'm very happy that I've started this process again. So that's the first positive thing that I've realized about this release. The second point, and this is by no means a self-plug, although it is kind of a little bit of a self-plug, is that I was really happy with the drum sound on this particular tape. Now, obviously, like I've already mentioned, I used all my own packs for this. Lo-fi drums 1, 2 and 3, I think they worked really well for this tape, and one of the main things that worked so well for some reason was just putting a little bit of isolator on those drums. I also did a lot of repitching with the drums as well, so that is something that I really think you guys should take advantage of if and when you get your 404 Mark IIs. Changing the pitch of your drums can really change the texture of a beat, and it's fun to experiment around with that kind of thing. So yeah, very, very happy with the overall drum sound in this one. The second point is that I actually really enjoyed using this device, the SP404 Mark II. Obviously, this is the first thing I've released on this device, or mainly using this. I did use the 202 as well, like I mentioned in my video about making this tape. But yeah, it's actually really fun using this. Like I've already mentioned about the drums, I took advantage of the buses. I did repitching with this, which was super handy. I did that on the samples and the drums. Chopping was amazingly fast. So all in all, the workflow was really fun on this device. Now, I'll talk a bit more about the workflow moving forward, which I want to do, but for this tape in particular, I really enjoyed using this device, and I think there's a lot of plus points compared to the SX and the A, which just made the process a little bit easier. Okay, so the final thing that I was really happy with on this tape was, ironically, the fact that I actually bounced it onto real tape. I think that added a really nice warmth to it and a bit of character, which you just can't get using kind of a plug-in or using an effect on the SP. I really don't think you can replicate that fully, and the fact that at this time in history, it's going to be very unlikely that people have the same tape decks as well. So that's kind of like a unique sound for me now. I've got my JVC tape deck, and that's going to be my kind of sound. That however much hiss or warp or whatever that tape machine does for my beats, that's going to be pretty much unique to me. I imagine there's not many people making lo-fi beats using exactly the same tape deck as me. So moving forward, I 100% want to always bounce my tracks onto tape after I've finished them. I just think it really does add that little bit of character and warmth that you just can't get. You can't replicate that. So it's nice to have the real kind of analog thing going there. Okay, so for this part of the video, I'll move on to the negatives, and then I will do a conclusion as well, because I don't want to end it on a kind of negative vibe. So one of the first things that I noticed immediately is there wasn't enough variety in the beats themselves, in terms of drum pattern changes, pauses, breaks, changes in the chop structure as well. That's something that I really want to improve in my next tape. Now, when I'm kind of making a tape, I do find I get a bit too kind of rushed about it. I think it's just kind of almost the excitement of the whole thing and wanting to get something out and wanting to do it quickly so it doesn't become boring. I think I've really got to spend more time next time getting the beats right and adding more variety into, like I just mentioned, into the chops, into the drums. And I will talk about how I think the best way to do that will be a little bit later in the video. But that is certainly something that I want to improve for the next tape that I release. Okay, the next point that I want to make is I wish I would have done more live effects using this. So I did do it on a couple of the tracks. I think I only did it on one of the tracks. I layered effects using this, but I didn't actually do effects on the fly and add them in like stutters with the DJ effects looper, little filter sweeps and stuff like that. I really wish I would have spent a little bit more time and done a few of those. Maybe I could have just ran the beats back through the SP for another round and added some effects on the fly. So the places where it does do it, I think that's cool because it's really characteristic of the 404 and the SP series, and that's something that I want in my beat tapes. I want them to sound like they have been made on the SP. I know they have been, but I want to make sure that the people listening can say, oh, that's an SP effect, that's a classic SP effect. So I want to add a lot more of those in the future. I don't want to overdo it because I think if you have been around long enough to have heard my first ever release that I ever did, that was too much with the effects. So I mellowed it out moving forward, but I think I've gone too far the wrong way now, and I want to bring some of those elements back in for the next tape. Another thing quickly that I've already mentioned is that it did come out a little bit quiet. I'm not sure why that is specifically. I tried to make the waveforms as big as possible in Ableton when I was exporting them without clipping. But just the overall sound of it was just quite quiet. Now I think this is where I fall down a little bit because I don't have that much knowledge about mixing and mastering. I have no qualifications, or I've never done any courses related to music. It's just all sort of self-learned. So I need to find a way of increasing the volume of my exports. If you've got any tips for that, please leave some comments below. I think I could have run it through again and maybe used a bit of compression, or I could have just tried to run it through my SP again and got a louder output volume. I don't know. There's things definitely there which I can experiment with, but yeah, my knowledge of that area is a little bit limited. So if you have got any tips for that, I'd love to hear your thoughts on that one. Okay, this is a big one. I wish I would have used more Foley sounds and more sound effects in the background. Now I think what I'm going to do next time I make a tape is actually just kind of collect a library of random sounds before I sit down and make the tape, and then I can add those in and use those as I'm going along rather than having to look for them as I'm also making the beats. So I think building up little libraries of sounds, that's a really, really good way to approach a project, and then you just have to dip into them and find them. The worst thing is if you say, I want a rapper Foley, like a little rapper sound bite, and then you have to go and look for it. If you've just got a stack of them ready waiting, you can just go into there, pull one out and say, yeah, that one works, and mix it in. So yeah, for my next tape, I definitely want to spend some time before actually making the tape. Obviously I've got my drum pack, so that's covered. Samples, I just enjoy digging for samples as I'm making a tape, so that's fine. But yeah, like rapper noise, bites and effects, all those kind of things, I want to have those all ready so that they're ready to layer over my beats. So the last sort of negative or bit of criticism that I wanted to mention about this is that I wish I would have made more beats and then chosen the best ones out of the bunch. So those beats that I made are all the beats I made for that tape. There wasn't actually any that got dropped, so they all went on there. I think next time I want to make 3 or 4, maybe 5 more than I actually release, and then I can choose the best ones and put those onto the tape, and then I think I will be a lot happier with the overall sound. I think there is a tendency to just try and put as much stuff up there as you can and hope that people like one of them, but I think at the end of the day it is your project and you should choose the ones which you think sound the best, and I think that's definitely a philosophy that I want to take into my next tape. Make more beats, have too many, and then cut it down. So I think for this one I made 6, so it would have been really good to make 12 maybe and cut it down to 6, and then it would have been 6 of the best tracks. So moving forward, that's definitely also something that I want to do. But again, as I've mentioned already, it is difficult for me to sit down and do these things on top of everything else that I do. So they're the pluses, they're the negatives. There probably was a few more negatives, but I think there was a lot to learn from this release for me. And in conclusion, so this is what I was talking about before, about kind of structure and variety, especially variety in the beats. I sat down the other day when I did have some free time and I started putting the beats that I'd made into the pattern sequencer on this device. So I started using the pattern sequencer, which if you've been following my channel for a long time, you know I pretty much avoid it, but now I have actually come around to it a lot since using it on the Mark II. So I had those beats that I'd made still on the pads and I thought, well, should I just try putting them in the pattern sequencer and see what happens? And to be honest, I was actually really enjoying doing it. This is a lot easier than the SX and the A to lay stuff down on the pattern sequencer. The quantization seems a little bit better. And to be fair, I was getting a much better sound. So I was actually a little bit annoyed because if I would have gone back and done this before I did the release and then released them all after them being run through the pattern sequencer, I think overall I would have got a much better sound. And one of the great things about the pattern sequencer as well, compared to say resampling or that weird kind of playing live method that I use to record beats, is that you can get those varieties in, you can get the pauses in, you can make a new loop which is a different structure. So moving forward, it's going to be tough for me because that method that I've made for making beats is kind of like a lazy way of doing it, and it's well, maybe it's just an efficient and time-saving way of making beats, but I need to invest more time in getting tracks onto a pattern sequencer because it does seem to me like it opens up a world of possibilities. Now, people say, oh, well, what about quantization? It makes the beat sound a little bit rigid, but it really is up to you as an individual or myself to work around that and figure out ways of making beats sound more humanized and looser, even though they're in the pattern sequencer. So maybe only quantizing the snares, for example, or maybe just quantizing the hi-hats and then doing the snares and the kicks completely off the grid. I definitely do want to now transition to purely making beats with the pattern sequencer, and I think, to be honest, this device is kind of set up a little bit better for that as well. The resampling is really fun, and obviously now we've got the massive polyphony, that does make it a little bit easier. But I think just having things on a grid in separate pads for each section of the song and being able to play between those, that's the way I want to move things forward with my beat making. So 100% the next tape that I make will be made using a sequencer. Now, I'm not sure whether I'm going to use the MPC Live 2 or this for my next tape. I would like to do a project with my Live 2. Either way, they're definitely going to be using a pattern sequencer. So I'm not going to be using resample or that weird method that I did for this tape, because although it's quick for putting out beats, I do think it's too limiting, and I want to have that flexibility of layering loads of stuff, adding pauses, adding variations, etc, etc, etc. And I think the pattern mode just really lends itself to that. So thank you to everyone that's listened to my tape. I'm actually amazed at how many listens it's got already on SoundCloud, over 1,500 listens already. So a huge thank you to you all if you've gone and checked that out. As I mentioned earlier in the video, all the drums I used on that were from my packs. So if you want to go to spvids.com and check those out, there's a deal if you buy all three of them. There's a little banner at the top of the screen. You click that and it shows you a discount for buying all three at the same time. So if you want to check that out, it would be very much appreciated because it supports what I'm doing here. I hope there's something to learn from this for you guys, and maybe some of these points you can apply to your projects as well. I'll be keeping this video very fresh in my memory for my next release, which hopefully won't be in another year's time like it has been previously. I'm very much hoping to do more releases this year. So thanks very much for watching, guys. Keep making beats, hit that subscribe button if you like what I do, and I will be back with more content very soon. Peace!